Hi, I'm Leif from Leif Labs, and this is the second video in a series of doing physics with Arduino. So now what we're going to do is open the Arduino software, go to File, Examples, Analog, Analog In Out Serial. I'm going to open that and we get this, and now I'm going to edit this code a little bit. So I'm going to scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, and the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to comment out a couple of things. So in Arduino, comments can be made with 2 forward slashes. So I'm going to comment out the print of sensor equals, and then I'm going to comment out the output, because all we're going to do is an input. And I'm also going to comment out the delay. Then I'm going to go up to serial.print and change it to println, which is going to add a new line to it. And that's going to be important in a minute. So having done that, I will then click up here and hit upload, and then it'll say it's compiling and uploading. And then once it's uploaded, what you're going to do is go to Tools, Serial Plotter, and that's going to open the serial plotter. Now, notice this needs to be at 9600 baud because that's what we set in the beginning of the code here. It says 9600 baud. You can do other baud rates, it doesn't matter, but for this kind of thing, 9600 baud is fine. So what are we looking at? What madness is this? What this is the voltage on the analog input. So here's our Arduino, and there's A0, that's where it's coming in. So what I've done is I've put a jumper on here, just a jumper wire that you use for all the experiments that we're going to be using in the future. It could be any wire, you find a wire somewhere. And now, here's what I'm going to do. This is just a taste of kind of what physics really looks like in the lab a lot of times. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to sort of mess around with it. I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to connect it to my one finger and then connect my other finger and just kind of move it around, randomly touch things. What is this insanity that I'm doing? Well, okay, let's look at the graph. I can actually move my fingers around and make things happen with a certain amount of control. And I think this really illustrates the difference between the physics that you do when you're kind of just calculating things and maybe doing a controlled experiment that's been set up for you versus what it's like to do real experimental physics. This is a taste of real experimental physics. You can see everything I do has this high frequency oscillation. That's probably the 60 hertz pickup that's just getting picked up on this antenna because everything is an antenna, which makes it also an inductor and a capacitor and so on. So I'm picking this up, and then what happens when I move my hands around is I change the electrical environment of this floating piece of wire. So this also gives you an impression of what we mean when we say something is floating. You'll hear somebody say, ah, that's floating. Ah, it's floating. Oh no. Well, that's because if you ever have an analog to digital converter where you're measuring voltage and the wire isn't connected to any specific potential, this is what it looks like. So if that ever happens in an experiment, well, this is the kind of thing you're going to get. And you can easily see how if I move my hand back and forth, I can make some fake signal and then convince myself I've seen real physics when I'm actually just seeing a bunch of nonsense. So I think this is an important kind of insight into what experimental physics looks like and to how the Arduino, with really no peripherals but a tiny piece of wire, can kind of open the door to doing experimental physics. And we're going to do this in a more systematic way in the next video where we start talking about resistors and capacitors. Thank you for listening, like, and subscribe.